reason, just please mute your device and don't put us on hold if you take another call. If you're not muted, a recording will come through, so we would appreciate that courtesy. We are recording this training today. It does get uploaded on our YouTube channel for future reference if you want to go back and listen, or somebody wanted to hear or and didn't get a chance. They're archived, which is a wonderful resource. We welcome questions like always. This is the same pattern we've done for the last year. We welcome the questions. You guys are amazing. You help us think about things we may not have thought about. And but we try to keep the questions to the end of the presentation just so we can get through the presentation and have plenty of time for questions. Let's see, what else do I need? There's a chat feature in WebEx, so if you don't want to call in your question and talk on the phone, you can always type it in. And of course, you can always email us a question later on if you think of something after. Just reminder, this is being recorded, and I think that's it. So with that, Serena, I'll give you the mic, so to speak. You can get started.
I know that I talk a little soft, so I'm just going to move this a smidge bit closer. For as one who talks as much as me, you'd think I wouldn't be so soft a voice. Today is August 11, 2023. We have survived COVID, please remember. Today we're going to be talking about notices of violation. The inspiration for this WebEx is because I found out every county and district tends to do something a little bit unique when they tend to do their legal process. Some counties would like to extend it like 3 different times and keep following up, extending, following up, extending, following up, extending before they would take legal action. Other counties will issue entirely new notices of violation after following up and extending the notice. Other counties issue a notice of intent the second they walk in and see the violation isn't corrected. So I kind of made a simple follow-along of just a general violation that someone encounters and is going through their legal process.
And for those of you that don't know Serena and Lauren are our standardization officers. And that's their job, is to try to get us all on the same page and doing things standard. So that's the heart behind this presentation. She's out there saying, uh-oh, everybody's got a different way that they're doing this. So I appreciate this is not an easy topic, and Serena is a superhero for jumping out there and trying to tackle this. So
just try to keep in mind every situation is a little bit unique.
Exactly.
People, as great as people are, they tend to not have rules. They tend to find situations to make up that just boggle our minds sometimes. So it's okay, everything is circumstantial. But we're just going to follow a simple one today. All right, let's talk about criticals. So when the Rural Food Code updated in to the 2013 Food Code in 2016, 2 different years, the name critical changed to priority foundation items and priority items. The 5-point on your inspection sheets are going to be the priority items. They are directly linked to causing foodborne illness. Meanwhile, the priority foundation items are highly contributing factors.
They support the priorities.
Yep. Yes. So that's kind of what they changed to. Oftentimes we still use the word critical, however, just because it's easier to say. So you'll probably hear me use the word critical throughout the WebEx. And yeah, just to let you guys know.
Now our computer, there it goes, working.
All righty. So whenever you encounter a critical violation, a priority or a priority foundation item in the field, it's always advised to try to correct it on site if you can. There's going to be, times where it can't happen, and we'll talk about that in a second. But here are some really common corrected on-site items. So for chemicals, I usually just have them label the chemicals, or a lot of times they don't know what's in the bottle, so they've just thrown it away. And in that situation, the issue's corrected. We can go ahead and COS it or co-sign it, correct it on site.
And Serena, can they just get like a Sharpie and write on the bottle?
Absolutely.
Label it, yeah.
Yep. Sometimes you can even hand them your marker that you use from writing your score. I've done that before.
Mm-hmm. As long as we have like the main bulk item that's got the manufacturer's direction for use and all that, we allow spray bottles, but like you've pointed out, we just need to know what's in that bottle.
Yep, just so they don't miss the pizza with bleach water.
There you go.
Another really common example might be disconnecting a hose if they don't have a backflow device installed. Just disconnecting the hose takes care of the issue.
Easy fix.
Easy fix. Granted, sometimes the hose is rusted out and they can't get it off and they have to go get a tool and yeah. So there's situations where it's not an easy fix, but for the most part, it's usually an easy fix. Another example might be moldy soda spouts. I actually took this picture myself. I'm incredibly proud of it. Look at that beautiful colony of it's gorgeous. So you can hand them the soda spouts. I usually, when I take them down and I see they're moldy, I usually will hand them to the manager. I've had managers stick them right back up, but most of the time they at least take them to the sink so they can be washed. And just removing the item to be washed and stuff like that, you can go ahead and correct it on site then, because the violation will be corrected. Other common examples of some corrected on-site actions, let's say they have moldy product. Remember, you are not allowed to throw away any product.
Good point, Serena.
So make sure that it's the person in charge who trashes the product. Another old-time thing I've heard about is denaturing product. We do not denature, so even if the person in charge throws it in the trash can, it's not your responsibility to grab a bottle of bleach or motor oil and douse the product in it.
Good point, Serena. I'm glad you brought that up. Yep, that's exactly right.
Another good example is for in-placed chemicals. Just having to move the chemical can correct that violation. And this is probably the most common one I run into. Maybe they just changed out the chemical for the dishwasher and they just needed to prime it, or maybe the bucket was empty and they just need to grab a new bucket for the sanitizer. If they get the dishwasher working, you can go ahead and correct it on site. I've even had situations where they just didn't turn on their booster heater. Now the question becomes, do you still deduct the points? Yes, you do. Even if it's corrected on site, they still lose their points. They'll be really mad about that, but it was still an issue before you walked in. Think of it that way. So it's a judgment call of whether you'll be writing a violation or if you'll be correcting it on site. I know that you guys are super smart and will be able to make this deduction, or if you're confused, you can always call your supervisor and ask them about that situation. Some examples might be dirty dishes. They might throw them in the sink and go ahead and correct the violation. Or maybe you're seeing a trend where every single dish is dirty, and you're just going to have to come back next week and see if they got it corrected. Another example might be broken equipment like fryer baskets. Sometimes they have some new ones in the back. They can go ahead and replace them. Other times they have to order them, and it's going to take a little bit longer to make sure that violation is corrected. Unsafe source is another example. So a really common one I've run into is like a restaurant selling homemade cakes or a cottage food producer's cakes. So them throwing the cake away will correct the item on site. But I do understand sometimes you want to go ahead and write that violation so you can come back later and make sure they didn't just start selling the cake again. So there are merits to both situations.
The important thing, and I hope I'm not stealing your thunder here, Serena, but if you don't issue the Form 17 because it's corrected on site, make sure you document on the inspection sheet COS, because you've taken the points, and if we're looking back a year later, we're going to be saying, where's the Form 17? Why wasn't it issued? Well, then we can look on the inspection sheet, see, oh, okay, it was corrected on site. That's why we didn't issue it.
That's a super good point. Documentation.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to be talking about a lot of documentation in a minute. Get ready. This is exciting. All right. So first thing I'm going to do is talk about our document library, because I can't do a WebEx without doing this, guys. Come on. So I remember I actually included 2 attachments in my email that I sent out. One was like a legal flow chart. Well, I'm going to show you guys how I got to my legal flow chart. I'm sorry, Jefferson and Mobile. Just take a quick cat nap. So going to the legal notices section, we can see that enforcement action flow chart. Oh, I'm sorry, Brad. But let me make a side plug here real quick. Phyllis and Lauren have made a new document. Go ahead and give your plug.
Yes, this came up last month. I actually already forgot about it. Serena reminded me. That's the old timer here in charge. But we have a new resource in our legal notices, and that's the termination of commissary usage agreement. So we've had some commissary owners out there realize that their permit is in jeopardy when you've got a rogue mobile food operator out there not following the rules. And so they're like, we're dropping this guy like a hot potato. Well, we need something in writing. And so we've come up with a little form they can sign, and it just declares that I'm no longer the commissary for this mobile food operator. So if you need that, there it is. It's in the document library. Jefferson, Mobile, if you would like a copy of that, we'd be happy to send it to you. Just reach out to us, and we'll get it in the email.
Back to our regularly scheduled program. Enforcement action flowchart. All right, here's what it looks like. Hopefully you opened the document I sent in your email, but if not, it's all right. I'm not too offended. I'm going to use it a lot during this WebEx. There is a fantastic flowchart. If you ever don't want to listen to my 30-plus minute presentation, you can just use this lovely flowchart. There's even that fantastic document that Ron and Lauren wrote that just talks about when is an emergency order. It basically is the text version to this lovely flowchart. So those are super useful resources. So we're out in the field. You've issued that Form-17 or an NOV, or Notice of Violation. Priority foundations are going to be followed up in 10 days. Priority items, however, are just 3 days. They can be corrected before that. A lot of times it's going to be your relationship with your restaurants. Sometimes they'll call you and be like, hey, I got that ice machine cleaned. It's been 1 day. You know, it's all right to follow up before then. But just remember, they have at least until the amount that you list on paper to get the violation corrected. Do try to follow up on your violations. It's pretty bad if you forget about them. Kind of shows negligence. Another thing that I always have to mention is our language line.
Ooh, good point, Serena. Very good point.
Always try to offer that language line. Write it on the inspection sheet. You can write it on the violation. If they do need it, legal can actually translate your notice of violation and issue it in their language. I think it takes about 3 days.
There will be a charge to the county.
Yes, and there is a charge, but it is an option if you're dealing with a big issue. It's never a bad thing to offer that language line.
I'm glad you thought of that, Serena.
So let's start our example today. We observed mold in an ice machine, 7/14/23. That item is going to be marked at number 15 on our inspection sheet. All right, side to my other WebEx. Remember, number 15 is when the item is in use. So an ice machine's in use, that's when it's marked at number 15 for food contact sanitized. Now, if it was something like a dirty dish, that's when it goes to 16. That dirty dish is not in use. So side plug on that one, but continue.
So you're saying that if a piece of equipment that is dirty is in contact with food, that's item 15. If a piece of equipment that is dirty is not in contact with food, that's item 16. So let's just say a can opener, for example.
Yes.
You see like crusted, goopy can opener blade.
Starting to mold a little bit.
Yeah, and before you can stop the person, they run over and they use it. That would be an example of item 15.
Or even you saw them use the can opener, you go look at it in a second and you're like, whoa!
That's dirty. That's not from just today. That's an example of item 15. But if nobody's used it, you haven't seen it been used, but you observe the can opener's dirty, that's item 16.
And that's the potential versus actual contamination.
Good point, Lauren.
Item 16 is a priority foundation. It's a 4-point deduction because there is potential for spreading foodborne illness.
Good point.
Number 15 is you are directly contaminating food.
Yeah, good point.
Think about it, causing illness versus a great potential for causing illness. Back to our regularly scheduled program. Our Form 17, we are going to mark item number 15 on our inspection sheet, and he can't exactly clean his ice machine right here and there, so we're going to go ahead and issue that Form 17. We are going to date it for 7/17. That is going to be 3 days from the day the violation is observed, so that would be 14, 15, 16, 17, so 3 days out.
So if the 17th, and I'm sorry, I'm throwing a monkey in the a wrench in the whole thing here. So let's just say the 17th is on a Saturday or a Sunday.
Let me pull up that notice so you guys can see it while we talk about it.
Yeah. So it's okay to give them to Monday.
Oh yeah. And we count weekends on our notices. It's not business days because technically restaurants usually operate on the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't count like official business days. We count days.
Yeah.
I know that's always kind of a topic. So looking at our flow chart, here we are. Is the violation pose an imminent threat to the public's health? No. Please see Lauren and Phyllis's WebEx about imminent health hazards and emergency orders for that kind of information. We're going to go down the not imminent health risk path today. So I have issued a fantastic notice of violation to Mr. Ron Dossie at the RSA Tower.
Shame on you, Ron.
Gosh, Ron.
Dirty ice machine.
Dirty ice machine. He wanted to contest the violation. However, you will see signing this notice is merely a acknowledgement of acceptance. So I did not have to refuse to sign this bad boy. All right, so we've issued our notice. It's actually Friday that we're going back. We did make it, or I think we are coming out the day after our notice is issued. We're coming out to check our ice machine. I know it was supposed to be the 17th. We were going back, but, you know, our schedule ran late yesterday. We were too busy to get out that way, so we come on the 18th. Not a big deal. We take a look in that there ice machine, and it's still moldy.
With a new pattern this time.
These are all ice machines I've seen when I'm out in the field, by the way. These are totally like, isn't it beautiful? So what are we going to do? Well, looking at our enforcement flow chart, you could issue a notice of intent, but there actually is another one, and that's possibly offering an extension. So this is where we get into that gray area of judgment call. I asked Ron, hey, why is this ice machine still moldy? And he said, well, I cleaned it. And I said, wow, you did? And he's like, yeah, well, I'm going to use this opportunity for education in this circumstance. I'm going to be like, look, it's really not clean. This is how I'm going to check it. You know, I might show him, I'm going to use my cell phone to look up in the top of the ice machine. I'm going to make sure, you know, it is clean. I might show him how to take off the front panel if you can go that far. But no, this ice machine is not clean, Mr. Dossie. And he's, okay, well, we'll try and get out to it tomorrow. And you can turn this around in this situation. When will this ice machine be cleaned? So that, you know, you give me a call when it's clean. Granted, you do want to pin them down with a date, like, oh, I'll get to it next month is not an acceptable answer. Mm-hmm. So this is that gray area where you know your restaurants and you know how to interact with them, hopefully. So you can make that decision like, yes, I know he was out of town, or yes, I know that if they open their ice machine and clean it themselves, it voids their warranty, and they have a maintenance man coming out this date. Working with your people is always to your advantage. You'll notice on my notice, I wrote an excuse for why it was extended. You want a document. He stated they did try to clean it. However, the machine was still moldy. Educated to, in my lovely in-field writing there, educate them how to verify. Will return. I gave him 3 more days. So, moving along, I arrive on the day that I said, the 21st. The ice machine is still moldy. Come on, at this point, you know, you're really pushing it. If they can provide a really valid reason, but they really gotta provide a valid reason here now. And at this point, it's notice of violation or notice of intent time. So I issue a notice of intent to suspend or revoke the permit. That is a legal document. I'm going to talk a little bit about making one in just a second, but it gives them another 15 days to correct this violation, which, I mean, that really kind of, yeah. So we're on that no notice of intent to suspend or revoke permit point. I also have this fantastic picture. Remember this, the right person will never get tired of you. We are the right person. We can never get tired of our beautiful restaurants. The NOI, I don't think that's actually a word, but I totally want to make it a word. The notice of intent, the NOI. Isn't that cool sounding? Okay, moving on. Your notice of violations are generated through your access databases. I actually had to write this one by hand because we don't have an access database here at the tower, and that was traumatizing. So I recommend you make your notice of intent before you go out into the field. You'll print it that morning. You'll take it with you, and when you see the violation is still an issue, you can go ahead and issue that notice of intent. Or if it's corrected, you can just rip it up. You don't have to issue it. At this point, hopefully you are in contact with your supervisor and they're guiding you on this process.
That's a very good point, Serena. When it gets to this level, you always want to loop your supervisor or director in if it's going to this level. Good point. Yep.
And there's also another thing to remember. That notice of intent, it usually has your district director's signature on it. Usually they like to know when their signature is being handed out, so it's always good to follow your chain of command, keep them all in the loop. And again, situational, but in this situation we issued a notice of intent for that ice machine. Well, I remember I learned that button. Isn't that cool? I can zoom in. Moving on. Now, in our particular instance, Mr. Dossie was terrified of that notice of intent, and he did clean his ice machine. He got it fixed within 2 days, and we went ahead and we corrected the violation and the notice of intent. Nothing came from that. But I'm sure you guys have stories, at least, of ones that have escalated, and it's fun to hear those stories. Now, let's make an aside. There is a different type of notice of violation where it's not 3 and 10 days, and that is going to be manager food safety course violations. They're actually issued at 120 days. Another thing to remember about those bad boys is we do offer a grace period. So if their ServSafe expired last month and you're doing your inspection and they're like, oh, I'm registered for the class, and they pull up, hey, my class date's next week, and here's my receipt and here's my verification that this is my class date, you can go ahead and give them a grace period. I would just write it on the inspection sheet and, hey, this was their class date, this is the person that was going. So they get a grace period. Another thing that is interesting for a lot of people is if the person with a manager's food safety certificate shows up by the end of the inspection, we don't deduct the points.
So you're saying that if you go in to do an inspection, nobody there is ServSafe or food manager certified, food safety certified, but they show up before you finish your inspection, then we would not take the points.
Correct.
Okay.
I know that one got a little bit mixed up during COVID because we kind of changed the rules on that one, but the intention is as long as someone is able or accessible, I guess is the term, with a manager's food safety certificate, we don't deduct the points in that situation. Meanwhile, other corrected on-site violations, usually we do deduct the points regardless. So ServSafe is a little bit different. Or, I'm sorry, not just ServSafe. That's just the most common one. It's easier to say.
I said it, I made you say it.
Manager's Food Safety Certificate violation.
Food Protection Manager.
A mouthful.
Mm-hmm.
Another unique situation could be pests. Oh, by the way, these are all fantastic pictures I took in the field. I guarantee if you go out standardizing with me, you're totally going to see me squat and look under a prep table at some point. I always find my roaches under there. It's so exciting. Also, like this mummified mouse and this legit fly just chilling on the cabbage. That was cool. So anyway, pests can be a little bit unique. It's difficult to tell when it's infestation versus notice of violation, and I'll let Phyllis kind of mention about.
Yeah, so if you listen to our emergency, like when to do an emergency closure order, we recommended if you see, like for instance, let's just take roaches. If you look under this table and you see these few little roaches right here, and then you go into this stock room and you see roaches on the shelf and the glue trap is full of roaches, and then you're over by the dish machine and you see another roach, then we're at the infestation level. And so that is when we're going to want that establishment to close so that they can effectively treat. It is hard to do what they need to do and remain open and keep the food safe. So at that point, that is a situation where we don't want you to write a Form-17. We want you to call the Bureau, let's consult with legal, tell us what you've seen, and pictures are great.
We love pictures of bugs.
Especially in a situation where there's an infestation and we're actually having to close somebody down. We have had, I mean, it's amazing, you know, somebody knows somebody, is related to somebody all throughout the state, and we've had those. I know somebody call their legislature, call our health officer, and when we can show a picture, then it shuts in. We don't have roaches. I mean,
they closed me down for one mouse.
Yeah. And when, that reminds me of the whole, we saw the nest. The environmentalist took a picture of the nest, the mama mouse with all her babies and all the droppings. It just kind of squishes that argument, to death.
They were just infested. They were.
Just a side note, as Serena's mentioning here, if you're at a level where you think it might be an infestation, you can always consult us. But if you can take pictures, that's great. But that's the route to go if you think you've got an infestation.
And then also on the notice of violation, so let's say it's not necessarily an infestation, but it is obviously a problem, and you do issue a notice of violation. Sometimes treatment does take a little bit, and them providing their pest control records are usually valid excuses for extending notices. I'd usually ask for copies of their pest control records showing that they are actively treating this problem. A little fun fact about pest control, I've heard a lot of times you don't poison and bait at the same time. A lot of times they'll actually lay out a sterilizer. So while the pest is still active at that time period, it is going to decimate the population. It sometimes just takes that generation. So looking at the pest control records is best in that situation. I need to stop hitting that button. There we go. Wiggle, wiggle. Repeat violations. This one is incredibly circumstantial, so it's difficult for me to give much guidance on it. Just kind of go with your gut on this. But you can have it acted upon if there are repeat priority foundation, and even core items.
Yes, that is a very good point. I'm glad you added this in your presentation, but if you have a restaurant, and I'm interrupting.
No, we're going to talk about floors.
Yeah. If you have a restaurant that buffet is never in temperature, and you've told them, hey, you can use time, but you go back, they're not using time, food is out of temperature, and you write it up, they correct it, you go back for the next inspection, and this is a cycle, like you have documentation for a year or two, then absolutely call legal. We've pulled the permit, suspended, revoked permits for several places that had ongoing issues. Now, you do want to pick your battles. We don't want to close somebody down for a floor or a floor
This
item.
cracked tile has been here for 5 years.
And I know it's annoying when it's a repeat core item, but when we employ, and I say employ because we're paying a hearing officer, we're paying a court reporter, and we just want to make sure we have a strong case that implicates the danger of what's happening here, that public health is in danger, and we're making our case. And it's hard to do that with a floor. I'm not saying that it's not important, but we want to pick our battles on those things that tie directly to food-borne illness.
Mm-hmm. Or like a really bad habit, like refusing to display a score, like blatantly. I know that was one that we dealt with.
Well, we've got a letter. Yeah, that's a good point. That's another aside that Karen and Tara came up with a great letter. Who just used that? I can't remember who it was. Oh, Cheryl, up in Madison County. They had somebody that was not displaying their score, but legal has a great letter that kind of tells them, hey, this has to be posted, and it's in that nice legalese that kind of gets people's attention, and we've gotten compliance using that letter. So good point, Serena.
I didn't really talk about much about what happens after the notice of intent is issued. Typically, your supervisor and director are going to know how to set up the meetings, how to approach this issue. So I just kind of left that one without much explanation because I know that one can be circumstantial, really. But that is our WebEx. I'm just going to leave that lovely picture up there for a minute so you can admire it. It's beautiful.
All right. Great presentation, Serena. This is just very, very helpful. I think the takeaway points here is to make sure you follow up. Just like we were saying, if you've got somebody that time after time, like you go back to do their inspection and it's the same priority foundation or priority item that you're seeing every time, they're just not coming into compliance. They'll correct it right then because you've written them up. You go back to do your next routine inspection, there's the same issue. If you have a pattern of that, then legal does not have a problem going to a hearing at all. But what messes us up is when you don't follow up. So you write it up, you give them 10 days, but you never went back in the 10 days. That's where it gets difficult for us to have any kind of enforcement action. So I'm really glad that you brought that up, Serena. Make sure you follow up. The other takeaway is document. Document. So document that you offered the language line if there's any kind of language barrier. Document if they corrected on site. Document that you followed up, blah, blah, blah. So, and then the final takeaway I think that Serena mentioned is that don't reissue a new Form 17 for the same issue. So if you go back in the 10 days and it's not corrected, then just like Serena said, you ask questions like what's going on, and she gave some great examples of what might have maybe Mr. Dossie he thought he knew what was dirty and he cleaned that, but he didn't see what she was really pointing to, the mold in a different spot. Or there's all kind of reasons why somebody may not have come into compliance. The bottom line is you have to ask questions, and then you can extend the notice, if it's a legitimate reason. If it's not, if they say, I'm not cleaning it, that's not my job.
I have not enough staff to take care of the ice machine.
Yeah, and then you just go on with the NOI, like Serena's trying to coin a new phrase here, NOI, that notice of intent to suspend. And I will say, let's go back to that certified food protection manager. We have had a situation where we allow that person to show up before the end of the inspection, but that has been abused, and we have had a situation where they did not have anybody who was food safety certified present. But anytime the inspector came, it was like a snack bar associated with a main kitchen facility. So that little guy would run up to the snack bar.
Next door neighbor.
I'm here. Yeah, don't mark us on that. After a couple of times, like, fool me once, okay, fool me twice, this isn't working. So you have to get somebody who's going to be working in this kitchen to be food safety certified. So we try to extend some grace, but yeah, obviously that's a scenario where that little rule was being abused. So if you want to call in a question, I think, isn't it *6, Lauren? They can do *6
themselves, yeah.
Yeah, just let me remind y'all that we're being recorded, and so keep your questions nice.
Yeah, and I just want to say that if you're unsure about what to do in a situation, always consult with your supervisor and district director. And if everybody is kind of scratching their heads, feel free to give us a call at the central office. We are here to help support you guys in whatever way we can. And sometimes that means, all just hashing it out together. Consulting our legal team, who is now Tara. Sharon is gone.
Yeah, Tara.
Yeah. And then, the other thing I want to say is that let's just try to remember that our job as environmentalists is first to educate and to protect the public. So, if we have a situation where we've got repeat violations going on, let's try to dig a little deeper and find out what the real issue is.
That's good.
And to work with our operators to figure out how we can all work together in resolving this issue, so that we're not making people sick or they're not making people sick.
Not good for business.
No, and the legal flow chart and the legal process is there to kind of help us if we've got resistant operators. So if you've tried to work with somebody and you've tried to educate and it's just not getting through, then yes, by all means, use that legal process.
Yeah. All right, we've got some questions. I think Beverly, you were the one I was thinking about, and that was the situation I described where they would show up at the last minute. And hey, and something that our newest district director, Wes Rogers, pointed out in our rules. It was, you learn something new every day, but anytime an establishment makes a score less than 60, they have to correct all the priority foundations. But in our rule, it also says that they've got to go through the food manager's course again. So in that situation that I was describing, that snack bar, that was one of those things where they did not have somebody present who was food safety certified, and it was evident because they had a score below 60. And so thankfully that's in our rules where, hey, not only can you not open up until all the priority foundations are corrected, but we got to get somebody present who's food safety certified. That's going to be actively managing the food safety aspects of this establishment. All right, so let's see, Beverly's second question.
The new NOVs only list the priority and priority foundation issues. I was asked about leaving a notice for the core items that have been ongoing and never addressed. I told them they can use the old form for those. Is that the correct answer for that situation?
Absolutely, yeah. We still have the old forms. They're still in the warehouse, and you can order those, and they're just a good form to have with you. They're a general catch-all.
I used to carry them for grease traps.
Yeah.
And I will say too that, and Phyllis, stop me if I say anything wrong, but with issues like that are repeat violations, core violations, let's say they're in an old building or they're, a restaurant that has claimed that they are, quote, grandfathered in, but they've had the same, let's say they've got terrible floors and the underneath their broken tiles is holding all kinds of dirty, nasty, moldy water, and they just refuse to fix it. You can put together a letter that basically has them outlining how and when they are going to resolve that issue, and you can use it to your advantage with permitting, the re-permitting season. So, you may not have to take it up the legal chain of command with violation notices. You can send them a letter and say, this has been a repeat violation for X number of years or however long, and basically, kind of get a plan from them on when it's going to be fixed, and, spell it out to them that it may affect their re-permitting.
Absolutely. Good point, Lauren. Absolutely. All right, Tiara, where can you input the extension date in the database so that it will show up on the notice of intent?
The NOI. This one is, so I think, let me pull up my WebEx again real quick. Or rather, I hate not having a database that I can pull up for you, because that would probably help a lot. It says something like, during the inspection, and I would put the inspection date because that's the initial violation date. I said, and then a follow-up conducted. I would usually put my extension date in there because obviously I issued that one follow-up, and then I came out again. So during a follow-up, and then the actual notice of intent date, I would, date that I'm handing it out, issued this day. If you were going to do it like you're doing a violation and you're coming out and immediately issuing the NOI, you would do that inspection date, and then the follow-up date would be that day that you're issuing the notice of violation. For multiple extensions, honestly, just your paperwork trail would be the part at that point.
Mm-hmm. And one thing we didn't mention is that we want there to be, like, when that notice of intent to suspend is issued, by this point your district director should be involved, and we want there to be an informal, what we call an informal conference, so that we can try to make sure that we understand why this issue has not been corrected and what can we do to abate this issue. So that's part of the process too. I knew we would get a lot of good questions from y'all. So
Tiara has said, as a follow-up, the form is pre-filled with the original date, but the extension is not able to be inputted.
mm-hmm.
So there should be like some dates like off to the side, and it should have like, I'm so sorry. Maybe I can just like email you, Tiara, on like
screenshot.
Yeah, I can break into someone's database. Don't worry. Just to kind of show you how I type those up.
Okay.
All right, Glenda has a question. While I was at a follow-up at a restaurant, I used my phone on selfie mode to see if the issue was corrected, which it was, and the employee started yelling that how dare I put my nasty phone inside the ice machine. No ice ever touched my phone. I kindly told her my phone never touched the ice nor the inside of the ice machine. Is there another way to check the big ice machines?
Not that I know of. I mean, you can't, some of those...
You can't exactly stick your head in there.
To me, that would be worse than...
And being in a restaurant, like, how dare you stick your phone in my ice machine? I've had restaurant people freaking out, like, I moved something or I touched a dish to, like, check it. And, oh, you've dirtied my dish, and they freak out about everything that you do. That's just yeah, come on.
Well, and part of our inspection protocol is when it comes to touching dishes, taking temperatures, anything where we are in contact with anything in that restaurant, our hands should be clean.
Yeah.
We should be washing our hands first thing when we go into that kitchen. And then also, as part of the inspection protocol, our phones are our work cell phones are a piece of our equipment. And we have the right to take pictures. If they are refusing our right to take pictures, then we need to document that. Document what we see and document that they are refusing to allow us to use our phone for the purpose of taking pictures.
Right, and you'll see some guidance along that line in our inspection protocols, which are in the document library. So if you have a person that says, I don't want you taking pictures, then you just stop taking pictures, and like Lauren said, you make a note of it. But you can also turn it around, like in a situation, Glenda, like Lauren said, your phone is a piece of equipment, and you're careful with not contaminating the ice, but you can just say, hey, this is something that you can do. You can carefully use your phone, because it is hard to see if it's clean. This is a trick you can do. You can check your ice machine using this, you know.
Most of my managers, when I would stick my phone in their ice machine in selfie mode, they're like, whoa!
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they want to know. They want to learn those tricks too, because thankfully most people want to do things the right way. And if you come across just like in a, you know, from a stance of trying to help and educate, most people are appreciative. I mean, it's no fun getting inspected, and but I try to make it as educational and pain-free as possible. But we do have, you know, a responsibility to protect public health. But yeah, that's unfortunate, Glenda. I think sometimes just our presence puts people on edge, and it's unfortunate that that person couldn't see that you're there trying to help, in a sense. But any other questions? Anybody got another great question?
I was expecting to have fun scenarios of this violation and this happened. I was excited for those.
When we were talking about Serena's presentation, there's like a gazillion different scenarios, and you know that's why Serena was very general. There's so many circumstances where you just, basically it comes down to you just have to ask questions. And in a situation where a 10-day notice is not being corrected, you've just got to ask, like, what's the issue? And just sitting around talking about this presentation, oh my goodness, we were all pulling from our past experiences as environmentalists in the field, and there's just 101,000 different things that can come up, or situations. But the bottom line is, like we said, document, and make sure you follow up. If you do a 3-day notice and you can't get there on that 3rd day on the notice, then things come up. I mean, we have things that are priorities, like if you get a phone call and so-and-so has, you know, the city's water main went out, and you've got 5 restaurants that are trying to operate without water, and you have to go down there. Well, that kind of takes priority over that follow-up. Or you've got a dog bite situation, and the dog is possibly rabid, and you've got to take that head to the lab. There's always, but as soon as you can get back to that notice of violation, try to get back to it.
I actually have a circumstance for that one. I had a restaurant that had no water at one of their hand sinks, and I tried to follow up. The restaurant was closed, but they were not closed. They were just closed that day, and I played tag with them. I tried calling them. I think it took me about 2 or 3 months, basically until permitting season again, before I could get in touch with these people. And I just documented, documented, just to kind of cover my base, like, hey, I'm trying to follow up. This is what's happening.
Well, if there's no more questions, we will wrap this one up. We are trying to solidify a date for our next WebEx, and we have had, let me just go ahead and tell you, it's going to be about body art. We've had a lot of confusion on some different aspects with body art situations. That is, man, body art has just become, like, it's grown, like, exponentially in the last few years, and there's a lot of people out there doing body art, and there's a lot of environmentalists that have asked a lot of questions about interpretation of the, the body art rules. So we did one early on, but there's been a few different scenarios come up over the last few weeks that kind of warrant another training. So Lauren is going to tackle that. We're trying to solidify some dates in September, and just stay tuned. We'll try to give you guys a heads up when we get that date.
I'll see when we upload this video to the YouTube channel if I can include that next WebEx date in that email, potentially.
All right. We appreciate you guys tuning in, and with that, we will just sign off for now.
Happy Friday. Good weekend.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.